The clinking of silverware against expensive porcelain was the only sound at the dinner table, save for the rhythmic, almost aggressive slicing of steak. My steak, I thought, or rather, the steak bought with the grocery money I had dutifully provided at the start of the week. But the thick, juicy, medium-rare ribeye was on my daughter-in-law Amelia's plate, and on my son Mark's. On my plate, there was a congealed, grayish lump of last night's leftover mashed potatoes and a small, shriveled piece of chicken. It was cold. I hadn't been allowed to use the microwave. "The electricity bill is through the roof because of you," Amelia had snapped earlier, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're already a burden, Evelyn. Don't be an expensive burden." "Eat faster, Mother," Amelia said now, not even bothering to look up from her plate. She spoke as if I were a dog, or perhaps something lower. "I'm tired just watching you pick at your food. It's pathetic." I saw my son flinch, just a tiny, imperceptible tightening around his eyes. But he said nothing. He never said anything. He just cut his steak into smaller and smaller pieces, his gaze fixed on his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. This was my life now. Or rather, this was the life I had chosen to test them with. A life I was beginning to regret with every fiber of my being. When my dear husband, my Richard, passed away 6 months ago, I was left utterly heartbroken. But I was not, as I had led them to believe, destitute. Richard had been a brilliant man, a meticulous planner. He left me a fortune, a portfolio so vast it wasn't just managed by a bank, but by a private wealth management team. We were, to put it plainly, extraordinarily wealthy, but I had seen the greedy glint in Amelia's eyes at the funeral. It wasn't grief I saw as she looked at me, it was calculation. I saw the way her gaze swept over my home. The home Richard built for us, the art on the walls, the jewelry on my fingers. I saw the way she looked at my son, her husband, with a new, proprietary hunger. So I staged a little performance. With the help of my bank manager, the discreet and loyal Mr. Harrison, I liquidated my assets. We created a paper trail of failed investments and bad debts. 2 months after Richard's funeral, I went to Mark and Amelia, my face a mask of practiced despair. I told them, my voice trembling, that I had lost everything. The house was being foreclosed. The accounts were empty. I, Evelyn Hayes, at 70 years old, was a homeless, penniless widow. "Of course you can stay with us, Mom," Mark had said, rushing to hug me. His voice was thick with a sincerity that I now knew was as hollow as a rotted log. Amelia had smiled, a tight, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "We'll take care of you," she'd cooed, patting my hand. "That's what family is for." Their care was a prison. I was given the smallest room in the house, the one in the back that was either freezing cold in the winter or stifling hot in the summer. The first week, Amelia cleaned out her closet for me. She presented me with a black garbage bag full of clothes. They weren't just old, they were stained, torn, and smelled of mildew. "Here," she'd said, dropping the bag at my feet with a thud. "These are designer labels. You wouldn't know the difference anyway, but at least you won't look like a total beggar. Better than those rags you're wearing." I recognized one of the faded t-shirts as one she used for gardening. I thanked her politely, my voice quiet and frail. I folded them, my heart growing colder with every crease. Then came the rationing. My showers were timed. If I spent more than 5 minutes, Amelia would hammer on the bathroom door, not just knocking, but pounding with the flat of her hand. "Are you trying to drown yourself in there, or just our bank account?" She would shriek through the door. "Get out, the water bill." I'd come out, wrapped in a threadbare towel she had assigned me, my gray hair still full of shampoo. She would be standing there, hands on her hips, her face contorted in a mask of pure rage. I would apologize, my voice trembling for effect. "I'm so sorry, dear. I lost track of time." "Useless," she would mutter, just loud enough for me to hear. Completely and utterly useless. I tried to talk to Mark, my son, my child. I found him in the garage one evening, organizing tools that had once belonged to Richard, tools I had bought for my husband on our 20th anniversary. "Mark," I said softly, my hands clasped in front of me. "Amelia seems very stressed. She's so angry about the bills. Perhaps I could help around the house more? Or maybe—" He wouldn't look at me. He just kept tightening a wrench on a bolt that was already secure. She's under a lot of pressure, Mom. This is hard for her, too. Having a new person in the house, an extra mouth to feed. Just try not to upset her, okay? Just keep your head down. It'll be fine." Keep my head down. The irony was so thick, it was suffocating. The house they were living in, Richard and I had paid the down payment for it as a wedding gift. The mortgage they were struggling with, it was being paid every single month from a trust Richard and I had set up for Mark, a trust that Amelia had no idea existed. The very steak on their plates, the electricity she screamed about, the water she timed, all of it was being paid for by my money. My test had yielded its results. My son was a coward, and my daughter-in-law was a monster. I was preparing to leave. My plan had been simple: quietly transfer the house title fully into my name, change my will to exclude them both, and then simply disappear. I would move to the coast, buy a beautiful home, and leave them to discover that their dependent was gone, and so was their safety net. But yesterday changed everything. I went to get the mail. It was one of the few chores Amelia insisted I do. "Make yourself useful, old woman. Go get the mail. Don't trip on the sidewalk. I can't afford a hospital bill." I shuffled down the driveway, playing the part of the frail old woman. I pulled the stack of letters from the mailbox. Bills for Mark, flyers, catalogs, and a slim, cream-colored envelope. It was heavy, made of expensive cardstock. It was from Saks Fifth Avenue, and it was addressed to me. Mrs. Evelyn Hayes. My fingers trembled as I opened it right there on the sidewalk. It wasn't a catalog. It was a credit card statement. A Saks Fifth Avenue Platinum card, in my name. I scanned the charges, my blood turning to ice. My vision swam. There was only one major transaction dated 2 weeks prior. Item, the Sovereign leather handbag, $5,000. Item, assorted cosmetics, $850. Item, silk scarf, $400. I didn't own a credit card from that store. I hadn't shopped at Saks in years. I knew exactly what had happened. She must have gone through the private documents I'd brought with me, found my social security number, and opened a card in my name. She was buying luxury goods for herself and sticking me with the bill, assuming I was too old, too stupid, or too poor to do anything about it. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. This wasn't just greed. This was identity theft. This was a federal crime. I had sat in my small, cold room for an hour, the statement clutched in my hand. A new feeling had taken root in my chest, a feeling that pushed past the grief for my husband and the deep, aching disappointment in my son. It was a cold, hard, clarifying rage. The test was over. It was time for the lesson, which brings us back to tonight, back to the cold potatoes and the steak I paid for. I had decided to give her one last chance, one final opportunity to come clean before I enacted my plan. I looked up from my plate, carefully arranging my face into a mask of frail confusion. "Amelia, dear," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it cut through the silence. Amelia sighed, a long, suffering, dramatic sound. "What is it now, Evelyn?" "A strange thing happened today," I said, looking down at my hands. "I received a bill from that very expensive store, the one with the fancy name, Saks." Amelia's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Mark froze. The air in the room crackled, suddenly electric. "It was a credit card bill," I continued, it was a very large amount, something about a $5,000 handbag, but the funny thing is, it had my name on it. Isn't that silly? I must be getting senile. You didn't happen to see who used it, did you? Maybe the mailman made a mistake?" I saw the flash of pure, animal panic in her eyes. It was there for just a second before it was replaced by a wave of venomous fury. She had been caught, and like a cornered rat, she chose to attack. "You senile old hag," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. She pushed her chair back. "Are you accusing me? Me? After everything I've done for you? Taking you in? Feeding you? Clothing you? I stammered, playing my part to the very end. "I just don't understand where the bill came from." "I'll show you what you deserve," she snarled. She stood up so violently her chair screeched against the hardwood floor and toppled over backward. She stormed into the kitchen. I heard the pantry door rip open, the sound of items being thrown around. Mark just sat there, paralyzed, his eyes wide. "Amelia? Honey, just calm down, let's talk about this." She returned. In her hand, she was holding a can, a large 22-ounce can of Old Roy, a cheap, wet dog food, the kind with the gelatinous gray gravy. She drew her arm back. "Amelia, no!" Mark finally yelled, starting to stand up, but it was too late. She threw it. It didn't hit me. She wasn't aiming for me. She was aiming for my dignity. It landed on the table directly in front of my plate, with a deafening crash. The sound echoed in the stunned silence. My cold potatoes scattered. The can, dented and ugly, sat there between us, a monument to her cruelty. Amelia leaned forward, her hands planted on the table, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were blazing with a terrifying, triumphant hatred. "This," she spat, her voice dripping with venom, "is what a beggar like you deserves." I looked at the can of dog food. I looked at the spattered mess on the expensive tablecloth. I looked at my son, Mark, who had sunk back into his chair, his face pale, his mouth open, utterly silent. He did not defend me. He did not reprimand his wife. He did not even look at me. And then I did something Amelia didn't expect. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a smile of forgiveness or fear. It was a cold, quiet, calculating smile. A smile that held the chill of the bank vault where my fortunes sat. It was the smile of a predator that had just watched its prey, blinded by arrogance, walk directly into a steel trap. She thought she was throwing food at a beggar. She had no idea she had just sealed her own fate. When you're pushed to the absolute limit, when your own family treats you worse than an animal, what do? I've seen some of you share stories of silent battles, but have you ever witnessed an act of cruelty so blatant, so degrading, that it left you speechless? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think was going through my mind when I smiled? I said nothing. I didn't acknowledge the dented can. I didn't look at the splattered gravy. I simply placed my napkin on the table, a cheap paper napkin, not the fine linen I was used to, and rose from my chair with all the frail dignity I could muster. "If you'll excuse me," I said, my voice as soft and brittle as a dried leaf, "I suddenly find I'm not very hungry." I turned and walked away. I could feel Amelia's burning, triumphant gaze on my back. I could hear the loaded silence of my son, Mark, a silence so loud it was a betrayal in itself. Let them watch me shuffle. Let them see the old, defeated woman. The performance was, after all, for their benefit. I walked down the short hallway to my cold, small room. I closed the door, and the click of the latch felt like the sound of a vault door sealing. For a moment, I just stood there in the dark, breathing. I let the mask of the frail, senile Evelyn Hayes dissolve from my face. The trembling hands stilled. The downturned mouth hardened into a thin, straight line. The look of confusion in my eyes sharpened into a cold, diamond-hard focus. The smile I had given Amelia was gone, replaced by a chilling calm. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken me. What she didn't realize was that she hadn't just thrown a can of dog food at a beggar. She had just given the executioner the final signal to proceed. I moved to the worn-out dresser. I slid my hand beneath the stack of faded gardener-quality t-shirts Amelia had given me. My fingers found what they were looking for. It wasn't a secret stash of jewelry or bundle of cash. It was a smartphone. A brand new, top-of-the-line, encrypted smartphone that I had purchased in cash the day after Richard's funeral. I unlocked it. My frail fingers, which supposedly had trouble holding a fork, moved with practiced speed over the screen. I opened my contacts list. It contained only one entry. Mr. Harrison. I pressed call. It rang twice. Mrs. Hayes. His voice came crisp, professional, and blessedly sane. Mr. Harrison was the senior vice president of my private bank, a man who had managed the Hayes family fortune for 2 decades. He was my ally. He was my weapon. Harrison, I said, my voice no longer soft or brittle. It was the voice of a CEO, the voice of a woman who owned half the city. The test is over. We are moving to containment and extraction. There was a half-second of silence. Harrison was a man who prided himself on his composure, but I could hear the slight intake of breath. Evelyn, he said, his tone shifting from professional to protective. What happened? Are you safe? The plan was to wait for her to trigger the high-value alert. Has she? No, I said, walking over to the small window and looking out at the darkness. She did something else. She threw a can of dog food at me during dinner. Another silence. This one was longer, heavier. I see, he finally said. His voice was now several degrees colder. The fraud was a matter of law. This is a matter of principle. I understand completely. The trap is set, Evelyn. We've been monitoring the card since you first reported it. Let me explain. The plan, the real plan, began 6 months ago, not with a bill, but with my husband's last words. Richard and I were not just wealthy, we were a team. He was the architect, the builder. I was the strategist, the investor. We had built an empire from the ground up. But Richard had one blind spot. Our son. Mark is a good man, Evie, he'd whispered to me from his hospital bed, his hand frail in mine. But he's soft, he sees the good in people, even when it's not there. And that woman, Amelia, she's a shark, darling. She smells blood in the water. When I'm gone, she will come for you. Promise me you'll be smart, I promised. After the funeral, after I saw the greedy calculations in Amelia's eyes, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't just want to protect my fortune, I wanted to know if I had truly lost my son. So I devised the poverty test. I called Mr. Harrison. Harrison, I'd said, sitting in his plush office overlooking the city skyline. I want to disappear. I want you to create a narrative, a series of disastrous investments, failed tech startups, bad calls. I want the world, and more importantly my son, to believe that I have lost everything. Harrison had been stunned. Evelyn, that's a $47 million narrative, not including the real estate. It's necessary, I'd interrupted. And one more thing. I want you to continue paying the mortgage on my son's house from the Mark Hayes Generational Trust. But I want the payments to be anonymous, rerouted, untraceable. I want them to believe they are paying it themselves. I want to see what happens when the woman who holds the family purse strings suddenly becomes a burden. Harrison, loyal and brilliant, had made it happen. The legal fictions were created. The news was leaked. 2 months later, I showed up on their doorstep, a single suitcase in hand, my face a mask of tragedy. I had expected impatience. I had expected them to be annoyed. I thought maybe I would last 3 months before Amelia politely suggested a nursing home. I was prepared for that. I was not prepared for the reality. I was not prepared for the pure, unadulterated malice. The garbage bag of torn clothing, the timed showers, the verbal abuse, the leftover scraps of food. And my son's cowardice was the deepest cut of all. He watched it all, his face pale, his excuses endless. She's just stressed, Mom. Don't rock the boat, Mom. Just be quiet, Mom. He wasn't soft. He was weak. He had failed the test in the first week. I was already planning my exit, preparing to have Mr. Harrison sever the trust that paid their mortgage and change my will to leave everything to the animal shelter Richard and I had founded. And then, the Saks Fifth Avenue bill arrived. That changed the game. I remember my hands shaking as I held it. This wasn't just petty cruelty anymore. This was a crime. She had gone through my private papers, stolen my social security number, and committed identity theft. I didn't panic. I didn't get angry. I got focused. I went to a public park, sat on a bench, and called Mr. Harrison on my secure phone. "Harrison," I said, my voice level. "She's stolen my identity." The line went dead silent. "What?" he'd finally said, his voice stripped of all pleasantries. I read him the statement. The $5,000 handbag, the cosmetics. "Evelyn," he said, and I could hear him typing furiously on his end. "This changes everything. This is no longer a family test. This is a federal crime. We are no longer just observing, we are building a case." "What do we do?" I'd asked. "Do you cancel the card? Report it?" "No," Harrison said, and I could almost hear the cold smile in his voice. "No, we do something much, much better. She thinks she's gotten away with it. She thinks you're a penniless old woman who can't do anything. She thinks she has a $5,000 credit line. Let's encourage her." "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "I'm going to pay the minimum balance on that card from an anonymous offshore account. The charge will go through. She'll be emboldened. She'll think she's a genius. She will try for something bigger. People like her, they can't help themselves. Greed is a hunger that never gets full." And so, the real trap was set. "Here's the new plan, Evelyn." Harrison laid it out. "I'm flagging her account. The next time she tries to make a single purchase over $10,000, it won't just be declined. It will trigger a Code 7 fraud alert. This alert will lock her account, freeze the transaction, and instantly notify both me and the store's head of security. I've already prepared a file with her name, her photo, and a copy of the fraudulent application. We will not call the police in a small town. We will wait until she is in a very public, very expensive place. We will let her try to buy something she can't afford, and then we will have her, red-handed, publicly, for all the world to see." "Publicly," I'd repeated, savoring the word. "She humiliated you privately, Evelyn. We will ensure she faces justice publicly. All you have to do is keep playing your part. Can you do that?" I looked at the bill in my hand. "Oh, yes, Harrison," I'd said. "For this, I can win an Oscar." That conversation had been yesterday. The dog food incident tonight was just the final ugly cherry on top. "She's feeling confident," I said into the phone now, my voice hard. "She thinks she's untouchable. The bill, the dog food, it's all part of the same thing. She thinks I am less than human. She'll go shopping soon. I can feel it. She'll want to reward herself for being so clever." "I agree," Harrison said. "The alert is active. My team is monitoring the account 24/7. The moment she makes her move, I will be notified. And then I will call you. Where would you like to be?" "I want to be in the store," I said, a chill running down my spine. "I want to be there. I want her to see me." "I will arrange for you to be in the manager's office," Harrison said. "You can watch everything on their security monitors. You won't be seen until the moment you choose to be." "Perfect," I said. We hung up. I stood in my room, the silence a comforting blanket. Outside, I could hear the faint sound of the TV, and then a peal of laughter. It was Amelia. She was probably on the phone with one of her shallow friends, recounting the hilarious story of how she'd finally put the old hag in her place. "Laugh, Amelia," I thought, a real smile touching my lips this time. "Laugh while you can." She thought the game was about steak versus dog food. She thought it was about who held power in this house. She had no idea she was a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. The fraud would send her to jail, but the humiliation, the can of dog food, that was what made me want to be there to watch. It was no longer just about justice, it was about retribution. The trap is set. The plan has shifted from a simple test of character to a full-blown sting operation. "Do you think the plan, Mr. Harrison and I came up with, is a fitting response to her cruelty? What would you have done in my position, knowing you had all the power and all the money? I want to hear your strategies in the comments." For 3 days, I was the perfect victim. The dog food incident had seemingly broken me. I barely left my room. When I did, I was silent, my eyes downcast, my shoulders slumped, I'd flinch if Amelia so much as raised her voice. I was, in every sense, the useless old woman she believed me to be. My performance was flawless, and it had exactly the effect I intended. Amelia, high on her triumph, became insufferable. She was manic, giddy with power. She pranced around the house in the $5,000 handbag she'd bought with my stolen identity. She'd accidentally swing it near my face, saying, "Oh, careful, Evelyn. This bag is worth more than your entire life. Wouldn't want you to scuff it with your poverty." She was on the phone constantly, her voice loud and bragging. "You should have seen it, Trish. I finally put that old hag in her place. Mark? Oh, he knows who's in charge. He didn't say a word." I sat in my cold room, listening. Good, I thought. Get arrogant. Get reckless. Climb higher, my dear. The fall will be that much more spectacular. On the fourth morning, my encrypted phone, hidden beneath my mattress, vibrated. It was a text from Mr. Harrison. It contained only 5 words. Hanover Jewelers, 2 p.m. She's moving. A jolt of pure, cold adrenaline shot through me. It was time. I waited until Amelia was in the shower, shrieking along to some pop song. I scribbled a note on a piece of scrap paper in my shaky, old woman handwriting. Going for a walk. Feel dizzy. Might go to the free clinic. It was pathetic. It was perfect. I left it on the kitchen counter, next to the sink full of dirty dishes she expected me to wash. I slipped out the front door. A simple, black sedan was parked half a block down the street. It was the one Harrison had arranged. I got in the back. The driver, a discreet man in a dark suit, didn't say a word. He simply pulled away from the curb. In a bag on the seat next to me was my uniform. Not the rags of a beggar, but the armor of a queen. I arrived at Hanover Jewelers, the most exclusive, expensive jewelry store in the city, an hour before Amelia. I did not go through the front entrance. I was quietly escorted through a private side door by the store's general manager, a man who had already been briefed by Mr. Harrison. "Mrs. Hayes," the manager said, his voice hushed and respectful. "We are ready for you. Mr. Harrison is waiting upstairs." I was no longer the frail, shuffling old woman. I had changed in the car. I was wearing a charcoal gray Chanel pantsuit. My hair was pulled back into an elegant, severe chignon, and I wore the pearl necklace Richard had given me for our 30th anniversary. My trembling hands were steady. My gaze was iron. The manager led me to the security office. It was a dark, cool room, one wall dominated by a bank of high-definition color monitors, showing every angle of the polished, brightly lit showroom below. Mr. Harrison stood as I entered. He was the picture of financial authority in his dark, tailored suit. "Evelyn," he said, nodding grimly. "She's early. She's on the floor now." I stepped forward, my eyes fixing on the screen. And there she was. Amelia was strutting. There was no other word for it. She was wearing the stolen $5,000 handbag as if it were a trophy. And next to her, looking pale, uncomfortable, and utterly spineless, was my son, Mark. Oh, this is even better, I thought, a cold satisfaction settling over me. He's with her. He's complicit. The whole world will see. We watched in silence. We watched her dismiss a sales associate with a wave of her hand. We watched her point at the most expensive display case. We watched her arrogance, her entitlement, her utter confidence that the world was her oyster, paid for by a woman she despised. "Look at that," I murmured. "She truly believes she's untouchable." "People who get away with small crimes always believe they can get away with bigger ones," Harrison said, his eyes glued to the screen. "She's heading for the Starlight Collection." My heart beat a little faster. The Starlight Collection was Hanover's signature. We watched her coo over a necklace, a cascading waterfall of diamonds that I knew from my own personal catalog, retailed for $22,000. "I'll take it," we heard her say over the hidden microphone, her voice dripping with casual arrogance. The young salesperson, clearly excited by the large commission, smiled. "An excellent choice, madam. It's truly a statement piece." "It's an investment, darling," Amelia said, loud enough for Mark to hear. She turned to him, patting his cheek. We deserve a little treat, don't we? After all the stress we've been under. She winked, a clear, cruel reference to me. Mark just swallowed, nodding weakly. If you're sure, Amelia. Don't be such a coward, Mark, she snapped. She turned back to the salesperson, her entire demeanor changing back to bored royalty. Just put it on my card. She pulled out the fraudulent Saks Fifth Avenue card, the one in my name. This was it. In the security room, Harrison and I watched the salesperson take the card. He swiped it. His polite smile faltered. He looked at his screen. He swiped it again. On the monitor, we saw his smile become fixed and professional. I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. It seems to have been declined. Amelia's face instantly turned a blotchy red. What? Declined? That's impossible. Your machine is broken. Try it again, you idiot. The salesperson, flustered, tried a third time. I'm so sorry, ma'am. It's not the machine. It's giving me a code 7 alert. I'm required to call my manager. Call your manager? Amelia shrieked. The entire silent store turned to look at her. This is an outrage. I am a valued customer. You are trying to embarrass me. I'll have your job. In the office, Harrison's phone buzzed. He looked at it and nodded, a grim smile on his face. It's done. The code 7 has frozen the account and flagged the card as stolen. The store manager's on his way down, and he has company. He looked at me. Are you ready, Evelyn? I took a deep breath. I've been ready for 6 months, Harrison. Let's go. We didn't run. We walked. Harrison exited the office first. I followed, one step behind. Down on the sales floor, Amelia was at a full-on tantrum. This is the worst service I have ever received. Where is your manager? Right here, ma'am. The general manager, who had escorted me in, stepped forward. He was no longer smiling. Flanking him, as planned, were 2 imposing suit-clad men. They were not Hanover employees. They were the store's private armed security detail. Amelia's tirade faltered for a second. It's about time. Tell this fool that my card is... Ma'am, the manager said, his voice calm and cold, cutting her off. There appears to be a serious issue with this form of payment. If you'll please come with us to the office. I'm not going anywhere, Amelia shrieked. You're accusing me of... Of what? Not being able to afford this? Do you know who I am? No, ma'am. A new voice cut through the air. He's not accusing you of that. I am. Mr. Harrison stepped forward, moving past the manager. He radiated pure cold authority. Amelia's jaw snapped shut. Who the hell are you? Mark, next to her, looked like he was going to vomit. He recognized Harrison. I saw the blood drain from his face. Mr. Harrison? What's going on? Harrison ignored him, his eyes locked on Amelia. I am Harrison, Senior Vice President of Fraud and Risk Management for the Private Banking Division. Ma'am, the credit card you are attempting to use was opened fraudulently using stolen identity credentials. Specifically, a stolen social security number. The store was tomb silent. Every customer, every employee was frozen, watching. Amelia's face went from red to a terrifying waxy white. That's a lie. It's my mother-in-law's card. It's Evelyn's. She gave it to me. She's senile. She's a crazy old... You probably forgot she lent it to me. That's a very serious accusation, Amelia. I chose that moment to make my entrance. I stepped out from behind Mr. Harrison. The sound that escaped Amelia's throat was something between a gasp and a choke. Her eyes raked over me. They saw the Chanel suit. They saw the pearls. They saw the expensive, perfectly styled hair. They saw the cold, clear, intelligent eyes. They saw the woman she had been robbing, and they finally understood that they were not the eyes of a beggar. Mark just stared, his mouth hanging open. Mom, he whispered. He looked from my suit to Harrison, to the security guards. The flimsy, pathetic world he had built for himself was disintegrating before his eyes. I walked slowly, my heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. I stopped directly in front of my daughter-in-law. I looked at the $22,000 necklace still clutched in her hand. I looked at the $5,000 stolen bag on her shoulder. Senile? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. yet it carried in the dead silence. Crazy. No, Amelia. I'm not senile. I'm not forgetful. And I'm certainly not poor. I haven't forgotten a single thing. I held her terrified gaze. I haven't forgotten the clothes you threw at me. I haven't forgotten the showers you timed. I haven't forgotten the leftovers you served me. I leaned in, just a fraction. And I definitely haven't forgotten the can of dog food. I turned to the security guards. Gentlemen, this woman, Amelia Hayes, has stolen my identity. She has fraudulently charged over $5,000 to my name and was just attempting to charge another $22,000. She has been living in a house I pay for, eating food I buy, all while committing theft and abusing me. I looked back at Amelia. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. She was finally, truly seeing me. Just 3 nights ago, I announced to the silent watching store, she threw that can of dog food at my head and told me it was what a beggar deserved. I let the words hang in the air. Then, I delivered the final blow. I was wondering what a thief deserves, Amelia, and I believe it's this. One of the guards stepped forward and took her arm. Ma'am, you need to come with us. That's when she broke. The mask of arrogance shattered, revealing the pathetic, cornered animal underneath. She began to scream. It was not a ladylike sound. It was a raw, primal shriek. No, get off me. You can't do this. Mark, do something. Tell them she's a liar. Tell them she's the crazy one. She tried to rip her arm away, her eyes wild, looking for her husband. But Mark was a statue. He was a ghost. He just stood there, his face ashen, looking from his powerful, wealthy, furious mother to his screaming criminal wife, who was now being placed in handcuffs. He was utterly, pathetically, and finally broken. It was a joke, Amelia shrieked as they began to drag her away. The dog food was a joke. She's a witch. She set me up. Get your hands off me. The last we saw of her was her face, contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief, as she was escorted out the front doors, past the shocked faces of the city's elite. The trap has snapped shut. Amelia's public humiliation is complete, and justice is being served in the most public way possible. That moment, when the handcuffs clicked, was it everything you were hoping for? Was it enough? What do you think should happen to Mark, who just stood by and watched it all happen? I really want to know your thoughts on this. The silence that Amelia left in her wake was deafening. Her screams echoed in my ears even after the heavy glass doors of Hanover Jewelers swung shut, whisking her away from polite society and toward the cold, hard reality of a police booking station. Every eye in the store was now on me. But it was not the pitying, dismissive gaze I had grown accustomed to. It was a look of awe, of shock, of respect. I was no longer the beggar. I was the architect of the most spectacular takedown they had ever witnessed. Then, a sound broke the spell. A pathetic, strangled sob. I turned my head. My son, Mark, was still standing there, frozen, next to the empty velvet cushion where the $22,000 necklace had been. Tears were streaming down his face. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a desperate, childish terror. Mom, he whimpered, taking a shuffling step toward me. Mom, I didn't know. I held up one hand, not in anger, not in forgiveness, but in a simple, final dismissal. Don't, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Don't you dare say you didn't know. I walked toward him. He flinched, as if expecting me to strike him. I stopped just short, forcing him to look at me, not the frail victim, but the woman who held all the cards. You didn't know she was stealing my identity? Perhaps not, I said, my voice low and steady, but you knew she was cruel. You knew she was abusive. You sat there night after night, eating your steak while I ate cold leftovers. You watched her time my showers. You heard her call me useless, a burden, a hag. You sat in silence, Mark, while your wife, the woman you chose, threw a can of dog food at the feet of the mother who raised you. His face crumpled. I was scared, Mom. She's got such a temper. I just wanted to keep the peace. Keep the peace? I laughed, but it was a cold, sharp sound, devoid of humor. There was no peace, Mark. There was only tyranny, and your silence, your cowardice, was your approval. You didn't just keep the peace, you held me down while she struck the blows. You are just as guilty as she is. He reached out a trembling hand. Mom, please, what's going to happen? To me? To us? I looked at his outstretched hand. I thought of all the times I had held that hand when he was a boy, when he was sick, when he was scared of the dark. Now it was the hand of a stranger. I stepped back, ignoring it. Mr. Harrison, I said, turning my back on my son, please ensure my son is removed from the premises. He is not with me. Mom, he shrieked, a new, pure panic in his voice. No, you can't. Where am I supposed to go, Mom? The two security guards, their job with Amelia done, moved toward Mark. They didn't touch him, they just stood there. He looked at their impassive faces, then back at my unyielding back. He finally understood. There was no appeal. There was no mommy to save him. He shrank. The last I saw of my son, he wasn't dragged out like his wife. He simply dissolved, slinking out of the store like a beaten dog, his sobs the only sound he made, leaving a trail of his own humiliation in his wake. The legal ramifications for Amelia were, as Mr. Tapp Harrison put it, a slam dunk. She had been caught red-handed, on high-definition video, attempting to commit grand larceny. The fraudulent credit card application, with my forged, digitally stolen signature, was undeniable proof of identity theft. The trail of smaller purchases, including the $5,000 handbag, established a clear pattern of criminal intent. Faced with a federal case for identity theft and a state case for grand larceny and fraud, Amelia's high-priced lawyer, whom she couldn't pay, advised her to take a plea. She was sentenced to 4 years in a state penitentiary. 2 for the fraud, 2 for the identity theft, to be served concurrently, with parole possible after 24 months. She was also ordered to pay full restitution for every penny she had stolen, a debt that would follow her for the rest of her life. I did not attend the sentencing. I sent Mr. Harrison. He reported that she wept, that she pleaded, that she blamed her upbringing, she blamed Mark, she even blamed me for entrapping her. The judge was reportedly unmoved. The gavel fell, and just like that, the monster in my life was caged. The day after the arrest, I returned to the house. My house. I didn't go in my beggar's rags. I arrived in the black sedan, wearing another of my power suits. Mark was on the porch, his eyes red and swollen. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he jumped up, a desperate hope in his eyes. Mom, thank God, I've packed all of Amelia's things. I'm taking them to Goodwill. I'm so sorry. Please, Mom, we can fix this. I'll make it up to you. I walked right past him and unlocked the front door. Mr. Harrison was with me, holding a briefcase. Mark, I said, turning in the doorway. You don't seem to understand. You live here because I allow it. This house, it was never yours. It was bought by your father and me, and it remains in the Hayes family trust. The same trust that has been paying your mortgage, your utilities, and your property taxes for the last 8 years, all while you let your wife convince you that I was the financial burden. His face went slack. The last piece of his diluted reality fell away. What? You paid for all of it? Yes, I said, and now I'm done. Mr. Harrison stepped forward and handed him a set of documents. Mr. Hayes, he said formally, this is a notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. All trust distributions to you have been indefinitely suspended. My client, Mrs. Hayes, is also filing for a restraining order against your wife, effective the moment she is released from custody. You will find all the details in that packet. Mark just stared at the papers, his hand shaking. Eviction? Suspended? No. Mom, you can't. This is my home. I'm your son. My son, I said, my voice heavy with a final, profound sadness, would never have sat silent. My son would have defended me. My son would have had a spine. I don't know who you are, Mark, but you are not my son. Not anymore. I went inside, leaving him on the porch with the ruins of his life in his hands. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. I just felt empty. And then for the first time in 6 months, I felt light. My son Mark lost everything: his wife, his home, his inheritance, and his mother. Some might say that for the crime of silence and cowardice, his punishment was too severe. Others might say he got exactly what he deserved. What do you think? Is there any path to redemption for someone like Mark, or are some betrayals unforgivable? I truly want to know your opinion on this. I didn't stay in that house. It was tainted. I had Harrison sell it, along with the prison house where Mark and Amelia had lived. I sold the expensive furniture, the art, everything. My new life began with a purchase. A penthouse. A sprawling, beautiful space of glass and light, high above the city, with a panoramic view of the ocean. It was the exact opposite of the small, cold, dark room I had been confined to. I filled it not with stuff, but with life. I bought a grand piano and started playing again. I adopted 2 rescue dogs from the shelter. Real dogs, not the canned food, and I spoil them rotten. They eat steak, and I eat what I please when I please. My poverty test had taught me a valuable, painful lesson. My husband was right, my son was weak, but the test had also taught me something about myself. I was not. I had Mr. Harrison help me restructure my entire estate. My son, Mark, was disinherited completely. My new will leaves my entire $47 million fortune to one place. I stood on my new balcony, the sea breeze in my hair, signing the final document. The Richard and Evelyn Hayes Foundation for Elderly Advocacy, a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal aid, safe housing, and a powerful voice for seniors who are victims of abuse, neglect, and, like me, financial exploitation. My ordeal had given me a new purpose. I wasn't just a wealthy widow. I was a survivor. And now I was a protector. I put the pen down, a real, genuine smile on my face. Amelia, in her greed, had tried to reduce me to a beggar. She thought my value was in my bank account, a resource for her to plunder. She tried to take my name, my money, and my dignity. She failed. She didn't understand that a person's worth isn't in what they have, it's in who they are. And I am Evelyn Hayes. I am a strategist. I am a survivor, and I am finally free. She thought she was throwing me scraps. She never realized that, in the end, it is always the greedy who are left with nothing but an empty can. My story is one of painful lessons, but also of powerful liberation. It proves that it is never, ever too late to reclaim your power, your voice, and your life. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to my journey. If my story resonated with you, I hope you'll consider subscribing and joining our community. We have so many more stories of justice and resilience to share. Until next time, remember to know your worth, even when others try to make you forget it.